Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. And I'm Heather Bernsanti. I think you all know that by now. Today I've got a guest. We've been emailing, following each other on social media. We're Facebook friends. And for some reason, I still uh, sort of screwed her over when we first were going to started talking about recording. Anyone who's on the show could probably say, yeah, Heather rescheduled with me like 5 times. But I think this is only 2 reschedules to get here.
You only rescheduled me one
All
time.
right.
So
You're
this is like
special.
our
You're
second.
special. Yeah. So it's Katie Heiser.
Yes.
Hi, Katie. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Tell folks what you want them to know about you.
Katie Heiser. On social media, I am Puddle Jumpers without the E in Jumpers. I'm also on Facebook for Puddle Jumpers as well, but been in the field since 2017 and kind of have always been in the play-based world. And I first started out in Northern California, a great play-based preschool with a great mentor who really just kind of like showed me the way ever since.
Wonderful.
So yes. And I kind of took what she mentored me with to every place that I've been to. But after leaving there in Northern California, I dived into the nature-based education world. So I've been in that world for since then, but they've always been in play-based philosophy, nature-based philosophy. So I love the outdoors and it's pretty much
it. I really admire Nature Playground, and if someone told me I had to do it, I would do it because I know it's wonderful for children, but the summers would be rough for me.
Totally. Yeah.
We were talking a lot about weather off mic, and that I would be so grouchy.
I have been grouchy. Yes. In Texas, I am now in Texas for everybody who doesn't know, but it was 95 last week and
in February.
And I like despise the heat. So just being outside all day, I was like wetting myself with the hose, like drenching myself. It was a little hot for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, in high school and right out of high school, I worked at a summer camp where we were outside all the time and there was no air conditioning. Like we slept in covered wagons and tree houses. And I don't know how I did it. I guess maybe age has ruined me. Anyway, so Katie and I are going to talk about letter of the week. And we got onto this topic because Katie does really fun and informative Instagram posts where I don't know the language, but it's like just like the quote and then you slide through for more quotes about a topic. And we'd been talking about doing an episode together for a little bit, and you had one that was like letter of the week is bullshit. Is that what it said?
I said I don't give a shit about letter.
Okay, yeah. Not that I'm not covering my mouth because I don't like to say the word. I was afraid of being wrong. And I was like, oh, there's our topic. There it is. So we're gonna start with this quote from Erica Christakis, the book that I think probably most people are familiar with by now. The Importance of Being Little: What Young Children Really Need from Grown-ups. Such an influential book, and I'd even been in the field a long time and sort of was already firmly in the play camp when I discovered it, and just everything was like, oh yeah as I read through. So regarding today's topic, Erica wrote, "There's no scientific evidence to support the teaching of single letters in isolation in a preschool curriculum or the introduction of letters in alphabetic order. This is simply a cultural practice that seems to make sense because it's the way we've always done things." Yeah, I call stuff like that a lot of times just, American childcare culture is our rationale for a lot of what we do with young children. So why did you feel strongly enough about it to swear?
Yes. I think it reaches out to people. I'm also just like I have a potty mouth. So I'm like, this is great for a post. And then it'll get everybody to look at it.
Yep.
But yeah, I feel strongly about it because I think just like that quote said, that it is kind of just like a norm that American education has just adopted. And when you look at, you know, other countries, they don't do it that way. They don't introduce it even as early as we do.
Right.
So I think that when teachers who come from traditional preschools or childcare facilities, that they come into it and they have people around them who are also doing the same thing. So they don't know anything different, because it's just kind of just been this hand down. You go in the closet and there's just like, you know, stacks of prepackaged letter things that you take out for the theme of the week. And you know, you don't really know any different. And if you don't kind of go into that like research or read these books or kind of get into that play world, you don't know like why it's not effective. You know, you're just like, yeah, you're putting it out. You want them to learn the letter of the week. Totally. I mean, the letters, totally, you know, like you want to have that letter recognition, but you don't know that this isn't the most effective way to do it. So you think it's, you know, effective.
Yeah. And talking about letter of the week specifically, I mean, what Christakis was talking about was a lot of practices kind of rolled into one, but talking specifically about letter of the week, which seems to be the most popular and the thing I see in almost all programs to some level that I go to. It makes sense. It seems like it should make sense, right? We want them to learn a letter, so we show them a letter, and we don't want to confuse them with other letters, so we just stick with this one letter for 5 days or 3 days or however often our program meets. And also, it feels like school, right? So we're all very worried about. I don't want to say worried about. We're all very invested in being seen as teachers, and so things that look like school are kind of a shortcut, right, for that.
Totally. Yeah, it's like a receipt, you know. And especially in this career field, you feel like you hear a lot of people who are saying, oh, you change diapers, oh, you know, you just play all day, or, you know, like they don't need preschool, like this, you know, this isn't you know, affected to their development. They need to go to a traditional preschool. They need to go to kindergarten to be able to learn things. So I think there's like, especially for younger teachers, they come into this and they're hearing all of that. And so of course, you know, you get defensive, you know, and early out, and it hits your ego, and you're like, no, you know, I am doing good, or, you know, I am a teacher, and, you know, I do top down, I sit in a chair while they sit on the floor, and, you know, so it's like, you get into these practices that make you feel better, essentially, you know, and you don't know that you're not doing it in a way that is child-led and most effective and research.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other things that I've been thinking about with this in the last couple of years, not just with this, but like when we talk about theme planning, and I don't want to get too far off letter of the week. We'll come back to that because I want to specifically talk about that and what else we can be doing. But so much is tied into one, high turnover in the field makes it a lot more attractive to just have this easy go-to. Whoever I have to put in the room can do this. So I know that factors into it. And I don't know about in Texas, but in Indiana and other states, the qualifications for like a lead teacher in an early childhood program or a child care center, whatever you want to call it. That's a whole other episode. Are so uneven. Like some child care places in Indiana have no qualifications for staff because they're regulated in a certain way. And some have, even the ones that require degrees will accept an elementary degree. And there's nothing wrong with an elementary degree for an elementary teacher, but it really doesn't, that coursework really doesn't go into development before the age of 5 or 6, you know. So I know there's a lot of, I'll say, good reasons that people fall into this and feel really comfortable with it. It's easier to show families when they come in and they're like, well, what are you doing to get them ready to read? And we can say, oh, we do letter of the week. So there's a lot of factors that I know feel really helpful to the adults who really cling to this. But it's not helping children to learn in the way that we think it is. It's very much helping us to be teachers, but it's not helping children to to have a learning experience that's appropriate. Right.
Totally. And I think I like how you said, like, it kind of, without going off topic so much, but it goes into just kind of like the structure of this field and
Mhm.
how, unorganized it can be, and the lack of education or the lack of resources or the
Mhm.
lack of, AB money and funding.
Yeah.
And, it kind of just goes up this like structural pyramid of like, what can we do better in this field?
Mhm.
But I think like when it really comes down to it, the turnover is hard,
Yeah.
and the lack of training, I'm
Mhm.
sure running a program, you come in, you have all these new teachers, and to be able to be like, here's the most effective way, that does take a lot of time. And when you're having new teachers come and go, I mean, how many times can you do that?
Yeah.
But, we are in this field for children. And,
Mhm.
I think, you know, directors, higher ups, they need to be able to, um, read that research or
Mhm.
know the effectiveness of it
Right.
and do it for the children, and not just because letter of the week is the easiest way to
Right.
kind of produce
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. So why doesn't uh letter of the week, why isn't letter of the week the most effective way to meet that goal?
Yeah.
And is the goal of letter a week an
Yeah.
appropriate goal? Like, let's just jump in.
Yeah, I would say like for one, it's really isolated. So like if you start off with A, in the beginning of the week, in the beginning of the year, and um kids are intrinsically motivated, so they're going to learn what they're interested in. And if you're learning about A and everything is A, all the books are A, all the food is A, all the crafts are A, but you have a kid in your class whose name is Zion, and their last name and their first name starts with a Z, like they're
Mhm.
going to be waiting. I don't know the actual math of it, just of how many letters are actually in the alphabet, but
52. There's
they're
52.
gonna wait
No, wait, no,
52
there's
weeks.
26. I don't
Oh,
know either. Oh my God, there's 26. I was thinking weeks of the year.
uh,
There are
yeah,
52.
I don't even know.
26 letters of math.
Um,
Good thing
they
it's
are,
not a math
yes,
podcast.
yeah. um, they're gonna wait a long time
Yeah.
essentially to be able to get to their name. And kids who just don't have an A in their name, like at all, they're gonna, why is this mattering? Why does this matter to them? Why are they going to be connected to this name? I mean, to this letter. And that goes for everybody else's name in the alphabet.
Yeah.
It's just they're waiting too long, and I think that you can see in a program if a kid isn't interested in that letter A, then they're not getting anything from that letter. You just spent so much time preparing crafts and whatever for that kid to not take away anything,
Mhm.
um, from it.
Yeah. And then some teachers will feel, sometimes I think it's sort of subconscious, but some will outright say it. I put all this work into this, and this kid won't even sit here and do it. I cut and colored and laminated for hours.
Yep. It becomes like a personal thing for sure,
Yeah.
and when you are in those programs, you do spend a lot of time pre-cutting and you put a lot of your own time and effort into
Mhm.
it. And so when it becomes craft time or whatever, that kid's like, no, I don't want to do it. It's like, oh, I just spent
Yeah,
all this
exactly.
time doing it. And
Yeah.
it makes you feel some type of way. But
Mhm.
um I think another thing is that like memorization isn't the most effective way to learn.
Mhm.
The rote learning isn't how humans in general learn,
Right.
and especially children. They need those hands-on experiences to be able to learn a new whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes me think about the so one of the classes I teach is called emerging literacy, and it's supposed to be about the foundational stuff you need for formal reading education later, and one semester I taught it, it was completely virtual, so we were never in the same space, and it was hard to interact with books and things and children and to
Yeah.
observe and watch. So anyway, there it was very much me telling and showing things.
Yeah.
Um and we would talk about things. Each week was a different focus from infancy till 5 years old, and we would talk about the importance of vocabulary and the importance of having a lot of experience with phonological awareness and just understanding how sounds work, and symbolic thinking being important, and dramatic play even being a really important piece of eventually learning to read, and all these foundational things. Excuse me, visual discrimination.
Yeah.
And we had, I gave them all the information. They would talk a little bit about it. They were reading about it. And when we got to the end of the semester and they were asked to put all of that into a plan and to frame an answer for a parent who was asking about reading in a 3-year-old classroom, how could you incorporate what we've done this semester, into that answer? And they all still really jumped to letter of the week, which we hadn't even really talked about in class, and worksheet kind of things. So that, to me, I was like, okay, so you all sat, and they were great students. I mean, they were nice people, but you all just sat through 8 weeks with me, having me tell you what I want you to learn, and couldn't reproduce it at the end of 8 weeks, and you're grown-ups, but you still think the best way to teach a child letters is to show them and talk about it.
Yep.
And then they're going to know everything about that letter and how to use it for reading. And I mean, of course, I didn't say that to any of them because class was over by then. But it was so interesting to me that their own experience wasn't even connecting that for them. And so, of course, this is a hard battle to now come in and say, those things aren't effective in the classroom like you think they are.
Yep. And, I think as young educators who are taking these classes, they see those big terms like phonological awareness, or they see those terms that it connects to their own experiences being in the education system. And, I think just from conversations that I've had with educators who are just leaving college and kind of entering the field, or are in college and, working in a classroom, they link those big terms to that kind of academic instruction. And I think in those classes, I remember taking one specifically just on play. So and I think that was more effective, to be able to see how play equals letter recognition, and be able to do, class materials or whatever, papers, to be able to, how can you ensure that families feel, like their child is coming home with something, but in a play-based, outlook. And I think that was really effective, because even when I started going to school, I saw these big terms, and you think that equals, top-down teacher.
I have to teach. I have to do phonological awareness lessons.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, what did that remind me of? Oh, it's gone.
I also think that not all children are on the same page. They're all developmentally at different, stages of their own development. And, in a classroom, mixed age groups are there's a lot of mixed age groups. And so when you have a 3 and a 4 and a 5 together, that letter of the week isn't going to be as effective, as you see it in the 5-year-old. You're like, oh, they're grasping it. Why isn't this 3-year-old not grasping it? And they're not kind of tailoring to their developmental needs. Their own, it's one size fits all. And that's, not how it works.
We give a lot of lip service to individualizing, but it's as long you can individualize all you want, as long as we end up with a standardized child at the end.
Yep. As long as they're hitting all of the assessments by 5 and they're ready for kindergarten.
So I mean, that 3 to 5-year-old mixed age group is really prevalent. That happens at a lot of places, but I think even in a 3-year-old room, that's a mixed age group, right?
Totally.
I think about a baby and how different they are from 6 weeks when they maybe start in an infant room, and 1 year when they're getting ready to move along, or if that's the kind of system you're in. And they're so different, and you wouldn't dream of expecting the same things from a 3-month-old as you do from the 10-month-old. But suddenly we just homogenize them into a 3-year-old. And so
Yep.
they should all be able to do the same things, and they
Totally.
should all have the same reading goals and all that. It's so easy to slip into.
For sure.
Yeah.
It is easy to slip into, and there's a lot of pressure from parents and admin and, just society to be able to like
Mhm.
children who are like academically ready for the
Right.
next
Right.
step.
It's part of or it's fed by the mythology of school readiness. Like, we don't
Totally.
even have an agreed upon definition for readiness, but we all think we need to achieve it. And we all think it means knowing all the letters for one thing. But one of the things I do like about Indiana's early learning standards is they're called the foundations. And they have columns under each, sort of skill or developmental area. There's like younger or infants, and then younger toddler, older toddler, younger preschool, older preschool. And then the last column is the actual kindergarten standard from the Department of Education. And it clearly says by the end of kindergarten, children should know all 26 uppercase letters and all 26 lowercase letters. But people still think they need to know all of that before kindergarten, or
Yes.
their child will fail. And maybe there's kindergarten teachers out there saying that. I don't know those teachers. I know kindergarten teachers who want kids who are mentally as healthy as we can have them, and socially and emotionally ready to be in a group, in the school setting, and to function through that. And one friend of mine who does teaches kindergarten says, as long as they can write something that looks like their name, I
Yes.
know what that means, and
Yes.
I can work with it, and they will, get their name figured out when they're with me.
For sure. I had a whole thought and it just disappeared.
Yeah. It's Sunday morning recording.
Yep, yep. But yeah, I think that also goes back to the standards that we have in
Mhm.
America are just
Mhm.
like really rough and, such an academic push down. And
Mhm.
so, recently I've seen just, second grade going to first grade and first grade going to kindergarten. So they just get more academic focused, and we're
Mhm.
not focusing on those social emotional skills, like you said. And,
Yeah.
I believe that the social emotional skills like are the foundation
Right.
for, those academics.
Right.
And
And having developed an identity that says I can learn things, I'm good at learning, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, like I am aware of like, what I like and what I don't
Mhm.
like. And,
Mhm.
I think when kids in America go to kindergarten, they're going from, you know, a preschool setting, whether it's play-based, traditional, or whatever, but then they go to a kindergarten program where it's like 30 kids, there's one teacher,
Yeah.
you sit down for long periods of time. It's such a like shock factor for that
Mhm.
5-year-old, and then they're expected to do things that aren't developmentally appropriate,
Mhm.
even as 5. And that's really difficult. If they don't have those social emotional skills,
Yeah.
and they're not going to be able to have that foundation for
Mhm.
academics.
Yeah. So I said something earlier about questioning whether the goal of letter recognition should be a priority. And that's really age dependent, of course, but um I think for me, what I see and what I've lived and what I did as a younger teacher was to think uh learning and readiness equals letters and numbers. So
Mhm.
most of what I do, and shapes, throw in some shapes and colors. Most of what I do should be teaching them those things. And I worked with 2-year-olds and was doing like letter of the week kind
Yeah.
of things. And there's some who can recognize it, just like they recognize the McDonald's logo and their favorite, TV show logo or whatever. It doesn't mean that they've learned it in a way that's going to be, transferable. But overall, there's so many other things a 2-year-old could be doing to get them ready, um, or to build that foundation for future, learning. But that the letters just are such a draw.
It is, yeah. And, I think that it, like you said, it is easier to be able to
Mhm.
kind of pick and pull and pick and pull and kind
Mhm.
of have like, just like, I have this year 12 boxes set up or
Right.
whatever, and next year it's going to be the same thing. And, it is easier to have that, but, um, I think it would be good to share some ways to
Yes.
not do that.
Yep. That's where I was
And
going to take you
yeah.
next. Yeah, go ahead. What should we be doing
Um,
instead?
yeah, and I think this can kind of go for all, age groups, you tailor to the age,
Mhm.
and safety levels, an infant probably shouldn't have just, small pieces of letters or whatever everywhere. So tailor it how you need, whoever's
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
But specifically if you're like in a 3 to 5 age program, having keyboards in your dramatic play area, or phones, like old phones where you can, see the letters and see the numbers, and print, everywhere around the room, and magazines and newspapers and books and songs, and specifically for like those 2-3s that you were talking
Mhm.
about. When I was in California, I was in the 2-3 program in the classroom, and those fine motor skills, and be able to do Play-Doh,
Mhm.
slime, like climbing and running and jumping, like building those, muscle groups that they're going to be able to need to write those letters.
Mhm.
Sensory bins with all letters and all numbers, and so they can start identifying these things that are play based and they're child led and they're hands on. I think
Mhm.
like letter of the week is very just like abstract,
Yeah.
and they see it on the wall, or the teacher is talking about it, and that's just that's assuming that all children learn from like hearing
Mhm.
things and just seeing things. But if we are like looking at how a child actually learns, it is hands on,
Mhm.
and it needs to be tangible, and
Mhm.
they need to be able to feel it, to smell it, to see it, all of the senses.
Yeah. I excuse me. Um one of the other things that I think about when I'm trying to decide how I can do you know, for specifically for this podcast, if we're talking about letter recognition, or identification or whatever, um, one of the things that we know from neuroscience is that we already know that those connections in their brain, that brain development is happening at a faster rate than it ever will again, as whatever the line is that we keep hearing that actually has led to some of this push down.
Uh-huh.
But one of the things we do know is that if a person is having fun and has a positive emotion attached to the data that's coming into their brain, then it's more likely that they'll want to repeat. And we know that repetition builds
Yep.
learning, and they'll be more likely to have a memory of what that was doing. So if we've got some letters in something else, that's really fun for them, that draws them in to be engaged, then it is, if that's our goal, then it's more likely that they will have a meaningful experience with that letter than
Yeah.
just sitting and doing the zoophonics song or whatever it might be during circle
Totally.
time when they
Yeah.
don't have choice to leave or come.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or that like sit down. Oh, now it's time to do letters. Everybody come
Mhm.
over here and sit on this chair. And
Yeah.
here's this worksheet, and you need to trace this thing. It's
Yeah.
not fun. It's not engaging.
Yeah.
It doesn't hit their interest. And, that also doesn't fulfill like a love for learning for kids.
Mhm.
Like as young as 3, I've heard other teachers who are in traditional programs, like those 3-year-olds are already like, no, I don't want to do letters. I don't want to
Mhm.
do math. And, like they already have that link to academics as not being,
Right.
fulfilling or fun or
Yeah.
engaging. It's
Or they've
like,
gotten in trouble for wiggling too much or not participating or not wanting to come over to the group. And so they internalize, I'm not good at school, and
exactly.
I make the teachers mad.
Yep. Yeah, this isn't fun. Doesn't make me feel good because I
Uh,
don't want to go do this. And now I'm getting yelled at, or, shunned away for go sit on
yeah.
go have a break because you're not
Yeah.
ready to learn your
Go to the
letters.
quiet corner.
Go to the quiet corner. I'm just going to leave you there for you to just get
Right.
mad,
Right. Right. It can't be bad. I didn't call it timeout. I called
It's
it
the
the quiet
quiet
corner.
corner. There's a mirror with emotions that are attached to it.
Yep.
They, um,
One of the things that I love to say to people and just watch for their reaction when we're talking about like writing their name, like writing a child writing their name, is when I tell them that going up the slide is pre-writing. Going up the slide is literacy. Because you're strengthening that core that you need to have strengthened, and we develop from the inside out. Yeah. So our fingers aren't going to have what they need for that letter writing, and we're not going to be able to sit in the chair like we want to if we haven't put a lot of time into challenging our, children who are able to do that, challenging our bodies.
For sure. And, I feel like that's such a good point, because a lot of, people in this field, they don't even they haven't heard that yet. It's the term, or the phrase, when you know better, you do better. But everybody in your circle or everybody in your childcare facility, only believes that the child is going to learn their name by holding that pencil and correcting them, tracing the Z, or, they don't know that climbing up the slide is so beneficial. They don't know that riding that bike, they don't know that playing with the Play-Doh for 45 minutes, like however long they want to, it's not just playing Play-Doh, they don't, they just think they don't understand. They don't know yet, that it does take that in to out and those gross motor skills.
Yeah. I think there's some who've heard it, but don't quite believe it, don't quite trust it. I think there's people who've never been presented with that way of thinking. And then also there are some who are just like, I don't know if that fits for me. And they just have to keep kind of, modeling, even, just like with children, we model and we talk through and, make it fun. One of my favorite things to do. And so honestly, I was in this preschool. It was 3 to 5 year olds. It was a language-based preschool and a speech language program at Purdue. And it was wonderful. And I miss it. But one of the things that I used to do is this mystery word game. And I got actually a lot of pushback from some of my play-based friends that I was even doing this, but, we get divided on that too, where there's some ground in the middle. But anyway, we'd pick a word from like the book we had just read together and write each letter on a big index card and stick it to the bulletin board to spell out the word. And then we had other index cards with those letters hidden around the room with like masking tape. And so the children could just be like playing and they'd see this letter, grab it and run it over and find which letter it matched and tape it underneath. And it was really fun. And it became a group thing. So it was social and they were using letter names, and there would be like a big celebration. If there was like one we hadn't found yet, there'd be like, we found, so it was, there was a lot of positive emotion attached to it. And it was just really a fun way to meet. We did have that as something we were trying to help some of the children with, not all. It wasn't the goal for all, but for a couple it was. And it was just so fun. And it was surprising to me then when some, some play-based folks were like, oh, I wouldn't even do that. Like, there's got to be some grace here.
Yes, for sure. And just like hearing that, it is a game. It is fun. It's collaboration.
They could choose it. They could not do it.
They don't have to do it. It's not like a forced thing, like it's the same thing for like name hunts, it's like, oh, we're going on. It's like, you can make it fun. You can make it engaging. They don't have to get into it if they don't want to. But, I think that play-based that isn't this like free for all, where it's just like, they don't learn anything, or they just, there are things, like those games that are able to match the letter recognition. And, it's intriguing, and it has them learn all that like phonological awareness. And, there has to be some sort of middle ground.
And, I will say that it was based on a child who was really into letters and asking about letters, and another child who liked to hide things and find them. And so it was, it was, for us, it was play. Another teacher could have done that in a way that was work, chore or work, or, maybe an inappropriate thing. But there's no one right way of doing things, is what I want to say, other than it should be play and child-led. I think that's a right way. I'll go out on that limb.
For sure.
But we make it more difficult than it needs to be, and less effective than it could be, because of all the pressures we feel, or the folks who've just not been presented with a different way of thinking.
For sure. Yeah. That game reminded me, I have a kid who's really into geography and states and flags. And so I have some things in my classroom, that is like printed or globe or,
Mhm.
things on the walls that, show geography, and some play-based educators who could go in there and be like,
Mhm.
oh, you have,
Yeah.
United States flags or other country. Like, it looks more academic if you look into it, but that was child led, like
Mhm.
they asked for it. They're super into it. They want to
Mhm.
play with this interactive, game for flags and
Mhm.
countries. And, to be able to just be like, yeah, like I see your point, but also this kid was super interested in it.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
fun for him, and it's like inviting, it's child led, and it's through play,
Yeah. I think if any of us, I think for any of us, if we can articulate the reasons for our decisions, um, and hear each other's reasons for our decisions. I mean, it's not that I'm going to agree with every reason that a person tells me, but it could get us a long way to connecting in a way where we could advocate for more play and for more appropriate um, literacy. I'll say instruction for lack of a better word, because we have, more of a positive relationship, and we've heard each other, and heard, not hurt.
Yeah.
And and that can really work towards all of us doing better.
For sure. Yeah. And I think like childcare educators, whoever,
Yeah.
is listening to this, and it feels, kind of like scary to kind of go
Mhm.
against the norm, or you are in a program that doesn't support this, and they want to see that receipt at the end of the day, and
Mhm.
parents are really adamant on making their child read by 3, or, you have these assessments that you need to complete. And, I think just like starting small is,
Mhm.
great too. And instead of having that worksheet, you can have like a sand area where they can, do
Mhm.
their own letter tracing, or putting shaving cream on the table, and, get little different mediums of art, and they can do like letters, or,
Mhm.
um, it doesn't have to be this whole change of your classroom. But pick and pull different things that you can add,
Mhm.
put more puzzles in there, or, play more games, sing more songs, get them outside more,
Mhm.
on your newsletters each week, like plug in a little article that just
Mhm.
shares like why climbing up a slide is really beneficial
Yeah.
um to be able to build those like skills to write your name. And then it kind of gets at more people in your circle,
Mhm.
and it gets those, parents to be a bit, oh, I see, you
Mhm.
guys are climbing up the slide for this, or, it doesn't have to be this like drastic change of your classroom, but
Mhm.
you can just like start small, and that will
Yeah.
just, you know,
Yeah,
it
and Lisa Murphy talks a lot about being as developmentally appropriately inappropriate as you can when
as
you're
you
in those
can.
situations.
Yep.
Like, if you've got an expectation that is not, uh, given by by somebody else that is not effective or appropriate, you can figure out a way to tweak it a
Go.
little, or add a little bit more of a
Yep.
playful element, or
Yeah.
add just that ability to choose to leave
Yep.
makes such a difference, if that thing is not grabbing them, whatever you've offered.
For sure. Yeah. And I like how you said, like, be able to leave, because I am a huge, like, advocate for like a instructed thing of like circle time, for
Mhm.
example. Like, just being able to have that choice that you don't have to enter, you can leave, is
Mhm.
just like makes children like that is their own autonomy, like
Mhm.
they are their own people. And if they're not interested, they're not interested.
Right.
And I saw just in my own classroom how much it just transformed, my level of stress and their level of stress when I allowed them to just not do things that they don't want to do,
Mhm.
and that switch is so powerful in a
Yeah.
classroom. And be able to provide them, choices to be able to go and, at any center that they want, or,
Yeah.
it is really powerful.
Yeah, I just finished reading, Suzanne Axelson has a new book called The Original Learning Approach.
Hmm.
It's really good. It just came out. But one of the things she said that hit me, was that even an adult directed activity could be play if children are free to choose it or not choose it, and free to leave if they want to leave. That element of play being freely chosen, and they can quit anytime. If you add that element to something a teacher has planned out and is directing, it still could be, for the children who choose it and stay,
Yep.
that could be play.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's child-led.
Yeah. Hope I didn't butcher that. I think that's what she said.
It sounded really good.
Yeah, we'll find out. I'm trying to set some time up to have her come on and talk too. So any last thoughts or any last tips or your favorite things to do instead of letter of the week?
Yeah, some of the things that I mentioned, like the keyboards and stuff, are like,
Yeah.
super inviting, especially like, that is so imaginative.
Mhm.
And I've seen it transform the classroom of just putting in keyboards and little dramatic play
Yeah.
stuff. But like lists on the wall, or, just anything kind of that you can just put up in and on the walls of the classroom. It lets them identify things. Like games, like you
Mhm.
said. And yeah,
Mhm.
also just like those, big body movements, like
Mhm.
the slide example,
Yeah.
that does help form those muscle groups. And so like getting them outside and letting them climb trees, or even hammering things,
Uh-huh.
and fly swatter art, it has that whole body
We
thing.
really forget about the shoulders and the elbows when we're talking
Yes,
about motor
yeah.
development, don't we? Yeah.
Yes. You Play-Doh, slime, all those clay, clay is like super rough. It's harder than Play-Doh,
Yeah.
but those are forming those muscle groups. So, just really getting them outside and
Yeah.
in nature, and letting them have those gross motor skills to be able
Mhm.
to form those fine motor skills. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Well, I'm glad we finally worked it out to a
Yes.
time that worked for both of us, and I appreciate your flexibility in the process. And
Yeah.
so I guess where can people find you if they want more
Yeah.
information or more of this?
Yes, on Instagram, it's at Puddle Jumpers without the E. On my bio, I have like a website that you can go to. My email is puddlejumpers@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. So yeah, those are the ways you can find me, and
Yeah,
um,
lots of ways to get you.
lots of ways. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on and
Yes.
talking.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd.